Thank you for joining Entourage.com. Today we get to talk to Ken of Hauk Designs, a very unique business that I've learned about through a friend, which apparently customizes vehicles too, but in a very different light. So, Kenny, thanks for being on, and thanks for being willing to share your story today with us. From what I understand, you customize Jeeps primarily. Is that correct?
We do. We are a company that focuses its attention mainly on the new Wranglers starting in '07. So all of our products are basically designed for one vehicle that we produce in-house, and that's the main vehicle that we customize, yes.
So why did you pick the Jeep as I mean, that's a very unique vehicle. A lot of people have done a lot to it, but is there really that big of a market to focus strictly on Jeep?
Well, it's the most accessorized vehicle in the world, hands down. And it's very modular in its design, so it attracts a lot of people that want to do all the customizing themselves. So the parts industry is very large for it. So it's easy to get lost in a crowd when it comes to the parts side of it. But it doesn't keep people from wanting to see what's new, what's hot, what's different than all the other stuff that's out there.
So that's funny. That I was actually going to go into that next. So that's a very saturated market. It seems like a lot of people are doing everything. It's like the Honda Civic, but of the general public. So how do you enter a company? And from what I understand, you started this in 2006. So fairly recent. How do you enter into this segment so young and become successful when there's so many part manufacturers and so many new things coming out for it all the time?
Well, I tell you, in 2006, I had absolutely no intention of building parts for the new Wrangler. I was, I'm brand new into it, man. And in 2006, I didn't know that there was a new Wrangler coming out in 2007. I went to my first Jeep show in 2006. I had some parts that I built for the older Wranglers, right? And they were selling fairly well. And all these guys walking up with cash said, "Are you making these for the new Wrangler that's coming out?" And I thought for a second, and I said, "Yes, I am." And I said, you can pre-order them right now." And I took their money. And I was taking cash like crazy. And then afterwards, I was like, "What's the new Wrangler?" I had to go find one and design the products that I had already sold.
Wow, so that's awesome. But you had a very different upbringing. Like, you weren't always around cars, right? Like, you were telling me a little bit earlier before we kind of talked here that your dad was a postal worker, is that correct? And so what led you into the car industry? Like, what's your story?
I've always loved hot rods and Volkswagens. I love going to the shows and admiring the craftsmanship, the attention to detail that went into those vehicles. So I wanted to do something like that. I just didn't have any training or experience, but I read plenty of magazines. I didn't have to get my hands on or instructional video on how to do things. I didn't know how to weld when I first started, but I watched YouTube videos on how to weld. They were all right there, and I could teach myself how to do things and take my time and learn the right way to do things. And, experience is the best teacher.
So, but were you always previous to that, what were you doing? Because in 2006, that's not too long ago. But before that, were you in the car industry too, or did you have a different kind of job? Did you have a different business?
No, I was in construction, and I was employed by a large company, and I was just another number, man. I worked really hard, and I made them a lot of money, and was not appreciated, and I just kept rolling. I just kept doing it, and I thought that it would continue. I was happy, I was content. I was playing with the Jeeps on the weekends, messing around with stuff, cars and trucks, but I didn't have any real goals or future when it came to a job. And then all of a sudden that just came to a sudden end. The housing market stopped. There was no need for me anymore. I had trained about 10 guys on my crew on how to lay tile, how to lay hardwood, and they didn't need the instructor anymore. They had all the entry-level guys to take my spot, so I was phased out.
So how did that feel? You were phased out from a large corporation where that's all you knew how to do at the time. Your hobby was Jeeps, but not really something that was concrete. What was the ticker that made you go from passion to work? Like, what was the ticker that made you decide to start making parts, even doing something, regardless that if there was money involved or not?
Well, I knew that if this happened once, working for a company that could just easily kick me to the curb, it's going to happen again. And I didn't want to be put back in that same position. I knew that I had the drive and the note and the basically the drive. I didn't have the funding, but I had the drive to make something work. Why not give it a shot? I was young. I was ready to roll.
So let's talk about that funding. That's a perfect segue into that. How do you fund your company when you started? How did you fund the parts? How did you start, like, in a sense, start putting two and two together when you were limited on funds and laid off?
Well, I decided I'd start with a prototype. So I looked for a local fabrication shop to build me a prototype. I designed out of cardboard. I just took some pieces of cardboard and taped them together until I had something that I liked the design of, and took it there. And they fooled me around for a long time. They didn't want to be bothered with it. But 3 fabrication shops later, I finally found somebody that was willing to work with me, and I had a prototype. And I had to cut some holes in my vehicle and mount it, and I just took it four-wheeling to see if it worked. And sure enough, all the guys I went four-wheeling with, they all wanted one.
What was that prototype? What was that first item?
It was a snorkel for a Jeep, an intake system for going through deep water, deep mud holes and that sort of thing. And it looked very homemade, man. It was rough. It was really rough. And the guys though, they loved it. They liked it. It was amazing to me that Jeeps are a U.S. made vehicle, right? And it's very Americana. And all the snorkels that were on the market at that time were all made overseas. They're all plastic, and when it would get cold, they would get brittle and crack. So I made mine out of aluminum. I used a different material that wouldn't rust, that was stronger, and I sold it for the exact same price as the plastic one. So that was the thing. Buy U.S. made, buy something stronger that will last, and it worked.
So do you still have that prototype on display somewhere for yourself, like to remind yourself?
I've got one of them laying around somewhere. Yeah, I do look at it from time to time. I got a lot of really bad feedback on it online. People were like, they said it looked ugly, it was rough, and I took it personal. It hurt, Yeah, it was rough, but I was okay with it. It was okay. I learned. I instead of like defending it and saying, oh no, I like my design, I tried to improve it, make it better, make it more aesthetically pleasing. So, soon after that, I decided, I'm eventually going to make one that's cast aluminum. It's more molded and smoother lines and crisper design. And I put a lot of money into it. I put, thousands and thousands of dollars into a mold to have it cast in a single piece. And it is, to this day, the most beautiful snorkel you can imagine. And I sell a fair amount of them. But the problem is, I don't make a lot of money off of them. Mm-hmm. Casting's very expensive. I was very passionate about it. And everybody who has them, they love them. They're like, oh my goodness, it's the most beautiful thing ever. They're painted to match the vehicle. They look really nice. But I have other parts that I was not as passionate about that I make a lot more money on. Mm-hmm. And that hurt. It hurt my feelings. I wanted what I was passionate about to be what I made money on. So I learned that, I have to be diverse. It's not always about what I want. It's about what people want, and sticking with that, with the high quality.
So you said some amazing things here. So I want to go back for a second and talk about this fear of rejection. I think that happens to a lot of entrepreneurs when they're rusty in their ideas at the beginning. And I also think that whenever you bring something to market, it's never perfect, right? It needs a lot of work. So when you think about that work and when you bring someone to the market like you did, and you saw people were kind of rejecting it, saying it's terrible, or, and you were taking it personally. But you said you did something different. You actually took that to heart and decided to make it better in a sense, right?
Yeah. You have to.
What was it that allowed you to do that, where you feel other people perhaps maybe get defensive and fail? Was it the need to really like get into that market, or how did you separate your emotions from that interaction?
Dude, it's not easy. I don't think it's easy. I think anybody who's passionate, and you have